The 2026 World Cup was supposed to be the biggest celebration football has ever staged. 48 teams, 3 host nations, a tournament designed to bring the world together. But for one team, the experience has looked nothing like a celebration. And now, after weeks of formal complaints, public frustration, and growing international attention, something has finally changed. Picture this: a flight that should take less than an hour, a journey of barely more than 100 miles, yet somehow it becomes a 5-hour ordeal involving border crossings, immigration processing, security checks, and endless waiting. Then imagine doing it again immediately after playing a World Cup match. That's the reality Iran's players have been living since this tournament began. So what exactly is happening? And why does a small adjustment announced days before their decisive match against Egypt matter so much? To answer that, we need to understand the most unusual World Cup journey any national team has ever taken. Iran qualified for this World Cup the same way everyone else did. They earned it on the pitch. Their players celebrated qualification. Their coaches planned for the tournament. Their supporters dreamed about a run into the knockout rounds. Everything seemed normal. Then, circumstances outside football changed everything. While most nations spent months preparing for a World Cup on the American soil, Iran suddenly found itself dealing with a completely different reality. Questions emerged about travel. Questions emerged about visas. Questions emerged about where the team would even be based. Instead of arriving at the tournament with stability, Iran arrived carrying uncertainty, and that uncertainty followed them into every single match. Originally, Iran's World Cup base was expected to be in Arizona, a straightforward arrangement similar to what every other nation received. Then everything changed. Instead of Arizona, Iran was relocated to Tijuana, Mexico. On a map, it doesn't seem catastrophic. In reality, it transformed the entire tournament. Suddenly, every match inside the United States required an international border crossing. Every training cycle had to be built around immigration procedures. Every recovery session had to account for travel schedules. Other teams were driving from hotels to stadiums. Iran was crossing countries. It sounds extraordinary because it is. Perhaps the most striking detail of all involves a journey that should have been simple: Tijuana to Los Angeles, roughly 127 miles. Under normal circumstances, it's a short flight. Yet Iran Captain Mehdi Taremi revealed that the actual process consumed nearly 5 hours, not because of weather, not because of delays, and because of the layers of immigration and security procedures surrounding every trip. 5 hours may not sound dramatic to the average traveler. For elite athletes preparing for a World Cup match, it's enormous. Every hour spent waiting is an hour not spent recovering. Every interruption affects routines. And at the highest level of football, routines matter. Fans watch 90 minutes, players live 24 hours. That's what makes this story so important. Recovery is one of the most valuable resources in modern football. Sleep, nutrition, medical treatment, hydration, video analysis. These details often determine the difference between winning and losing. Most teams finish a match and return to controlled environments designed specifically for recovery. Iran faced something different: border crossings, security checks, travel schedules, uncertainty. None of it appears on a statistics sheet, none of it shows up in highlights. Yet every sports scientist in the world understands how much those factors matter. The problem with fatigue is that it rarely announces itself immediately. Players don't suddenly stop running, teams don't instantly fall apart. Instead, the effects accumulate quietly. A slower recovery session here, a little less sleep there, a few missed minutes of treatment, and small disadvantages that barely seem noticeable on their own, but become significant over the course of a tournament. Sports scientists often describe elite competition as a game of margins. The difference between winning and losing can be measured in fractions of a second. A slightly slower sprint, a slightly delayed reaction, a decision made a fraction too late. That's why coaches become obsessed with recovery. They know that by the time fatigue becomes visible, it's often too late to fix. For Iran, the concern has never been a single journey. It's the repeated nature of those journeys, the fact that every match requires the same process all over again. Border crossings, security checks, travel schedules. While opponents focus entirely on football, Iran has repeatedly been forced to focus on football and logistics at the same time. And in a tournament where the margins are already razor thin, that extra burden may be more significant than any statistic can ever fully capture. Eventually, Iran's frustration became impossible to hide. Head coach Amir Gailanoui publicly described his team's situation in remarkably strong terms. He argued that no other squad at the tournament was operating under comparable conditions. More importantly, he highlighted the recovery issue. According to the coach, players were often expected to leave the United States almost immediately after matches, rather than remaining overnight to recover. For a team already facing unique logistical challenges, that requirement felt like another obstacle stacked on top of an already difficult tournament. This is where the story takes its turn. Iran's federation formally raised concerns, publicly, repeatedly. They argued that the arrangement created a competitive disadvantage. They highlighted the travel burden, they highlighted visa complications, they highlighted the challenges facing support staff and journalists, and eventually, something happened. Ahead of Iran's final group stage match against Egypt, officials confirmed a change. Iran would be allowed to enter the United States 2 full days before the game. It sounds small. It isn't. For the first time all tournament, Iran would have something approaching the preparation window. Every other team takes for granted. The significance of this adjustment goes beyond Egypt. It raises a much larger question. What happens if Iran advances? Knockout football is unforgiving. Matches come quickly. Recovery becomes even more important. The travel burden that was difficult during the group stage could become almost impossible later in the tournament. That's why many observers see this latest development not as a solution, but as a test of whether organizers are willing to adapt when competitive fairness becomes a concern. Because if one nation is forced to prepare under dramatically different conditions than everyone else, questions inevitably follow. The players aren't the only people affected. Iran's supporters have experienced their own complicated tournament. Some traveled enormous distances simply to watch the team, others faced visa difficulties. Many carried mixed emotions: pride in the players, frustration with politics, hope for football, concern about everything surrounding it. Inside stadiums, those emotions have been visible. Outside stadiums, they have been impossible to ignore. The result has been one of the most unusual supporter experiences in modern World Cup history. So where does this leave Iran? They remain alive. They remain competitive. And despite everything, they remain one result away from advancing the 5-hour journeys. The border crossings, the visa complications, the uncertainty, none of it has eliminated their chances. In fact, it may have become part of the story that defines this team, because long after the group stage ends, people may not remember every pass or every tackle. They may remember something else instead. A World Cup team that effectively lived in 2 countries at once. A team that crossed international borders just to play football. A team that complained, persisted, and eventually forced a change. Whether that change arrives too late or becomes the first step towards something bigger remains to be seen. But one thing is certain: no team at this World Cup has taken a journey quite like Iran's.